Hello, I am Sarah Pagioni. I am the chair and a professor in the political science department. Welcome to our panel, From College to Career, Using Your Political Science Degree in Public Affairs and Beyond. Today we are very fortunate to have 6 of our accomplished alumni back here on campus to speak with some of our current students about career paths and how their academic work here at Ohio University in political science and related fields helped them prepare and set them on a productive and really successful career path. So before I introduce our panelists and ask them to offer some brief remarks on their transition from college to career and then open the questions up to you, I wanted to thank you all for being here today, this Friday afternoon. I would say you're already making some great choices in thinking about that transition from college to career by spending a little time here with us today. So I'd like to start first by introducing 3 of the alumni who will be recognized later this evening at the College of Arts and Sciences Notable Alumni Dinner. We have Tracy Kelly, who currently serves as the executive director of the Fairfield Medical Center Foundation. Tracy earned her BA in history and also her master's in public administration, taking a number of classes in the department. I know that Tracy exhibited leadership and executive skills here at OU, serving in various capacities, including student senate president. We also have Kyle Triplet, who is currently a regional sales manager with Olympic Steel. He's also an alum of the Student Senate and the Political Science Department, and he also serves on the Ohio University Alumni Association Board of Directors. Justin Mccauley is also joining us today. He is the president of Mccauley & Company, a firm that provides strategic consulting and communication services. We're really fortunate. Justin also joined us about a year ago last spring and taught a special course for us called You with a Job. Always a good and exciting thing, right?
I didn't name the course.
We're also really pleased to welcome some alumni who also have went on from their academic work to earn law degrees. We are happy to have Rob Dorans with us. He serves as legal counsel for ACT Ohio, representing construction and building and union trades in our state. We are also very excited to have Judge Marc Kantrowitz with us today. He rejoined OU in 2015 after retiring as an Associate Justice of the Massachusetts Appeals Court as a Glidden visiting professor, and he offered a fascinating history course on famous trials in American history. And finally, we are fortunate to have with us Steve Ellis, who serves as the Senior Director for E-commerce Sales at Luxottica. Steve is no stranger to serving Ohio University and its students. Previously, he served on the Arts and Sciences Deeds Advisory Board. He mentored students through the Student Advisory Board, and he currently serves as an OU Alumni Association board member. So thank you so much for joining us today, and also for all of you for joining us as well. I'd like to start by hearing from our 3 notable alumni honorees and ask if you could each take just a couple minutes to let us know what you found helpful in your transition from your academic work to your career, and if you'd like to offer our audience some advice about what they could be doing and thinking about now to prepare for that transition. Do we want to start with Justin?
Sure. Thanks everybody for being here today and for having me. When I got started in my career, I really wasn't sure what direction I was headed. I think, like maybe many of you, and the reason why you're here today, my major, political science, at the time was pre-law. It was basically like, you were going to go to law school next, and I thought I was. When I got out into the real world, I had a job that I didn't love and was really sad that I hadn't taken the victory lap 5th year like many of my friends did. It was not long after that I started volunteering on political campaigns. That was really what I had envisioned my future holding. Getting involved, becoming a political advisor, maybe someday running for office, and through that volunteer opportunity, I built a network. I leveraged the network that I built while I was here volunteering and occasionally being paid to be on campaigns, and transitioned those contacts that I had developed from countless hours of just building yard signs, stuffing envelopes, doing grunt work, into reputation for being reliable and consistent and thoughtful and all the things that I think you would want in an employee. So eventually I flipped that reputation into a paying job, and it's not far from having contacts in politics to claiming favors from those people that you have helped and being paid for it. I had, not long after that, in my early 20s, started a company, and I was consulting. I didn't know that I was actually lobbying at the time. I just thought I was brokering relationships. I know this guy, you need to get something done with this guy, why don't we have coffee, and away we went. Eventually, I figured out that there were laws involved that said you have to report your lobbying activity, you have to register with an agency in Columbus, and so I caught up and I got everything squared away. But the strength of my network was really my entry point into a career that I was sure was going to go down the same path that some of my fellow panelists have gone, into law school and then into some sort of a legal-based profession. Instead, it was more focused where I hoped eventually it would lead me into politics, and then that took me into being a consultant and having my name on my business card twice. You know, I own my own firm now, and I actually have a couple of job openings posted on our LinkedIn page. If anybody in here is interested, you know, I would very much like to entertain any Bobcat candidates. So that's how I got started.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Tracy?
So my story might be a little bit different from that of some of the other panelists. I went to a very, very small private high school, and I was so shy. Like, most people who know me would say that I'm shy now, but I was like the girl in the group who never says anything, like that shy girl. And I went to Ohio University Lancaster, so I started out at a regional campus. And the class sizes at the regional campus are very small compared to Athens. And I had some professors who noticed something in me. I don't know how they did it because I wasn't talking, but I showed up and I worked hard, and you know, they started to encourage me to get involved in volunteer opportunities. So the regional campuses have student organizations and opportunities just like they have here. So there was a student lit journal, and they encouraged me to get involved as an editor, and then I had some professors who encouraged me to volunteer with an event called Celebrate Women. And so I started to get involved in those events, and you know, it's not so much that I became any less shy, I just started to find things that mattered to me and kind of ways to push myself. So from there I applied for a position called the student trustee position, which Kyle has also held. And I served in that capacity for 2 years, and I really pushed myself there quite a bit too. I was rather outspoken, I think some would say, as a student trustee, which, if you know me, is kind of uncharacteristic, but I felt it was my responsibility. So I did that, and I really came to enjoy sort of working on behalf of other people and trying to connect people with resources. And I served 3 terms as the president of the Graduate Student Senate, which was in some ways terrifying, but in other ways, you know, great, because I learned a lot about myself, and once again saw that I knew that I wanted to work with people and for people in some service capacity. And I had an interesting kind of turn of events. I guess I'm backing up a little bit here, but I was an undergrad English major as well as history, and I thought I was going to be a master's in English candidate. Like, that's what I thought I was going to do. And I sat down with my advisor and I said, I'd like you to write a letter of recommendation for me for the English department. And she said no. She said you're a great student, but she said, I don't think that's where your heart is. When I look at your actions, I see you volunteering over here and, you know, serving in student government, like that. I don't think you want to sit behind, you know, a desk and write all day. I think you want to push yourself and get out there. And so she said she would not write a letter of recommendation for me for the English department unless I would meet with Dr. Bernier. Oh. You don't remember that? I remember you.
I remember you, but I don't remember the sequence of events.
Yeah. And at the time, she actually proposed that I would be in the MPA program, and I was very resistant. I was like, oh no, I want to do political science. Like, this MPA thing, I don't know what that is. And so once again, I sort of pushed back against a mentor, like, I don't know. And I think she saw in me what, you know, Dr. Giese in the English department saw, which is, you know, I think you want to go into public service. And And eventually I did end up in the MPA program, and I think it provided this really great foundation for me, I think, for my future life. The coursework was fantastic. I think the professors were very warm and once again kind of brought me out of my shell and connected me with opportunities in the community to grow. And so I think, yeah, I think I had a fantastic experience, and I think people really sort of helped me to launch through my time at Ohio University.
Thank you so much. Kyle, we'd love to hear from you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kyle Triplet. I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and I graduated here in 2012. Political science major, and I had the American politics track. So I had Dr. Pagoni and Dr. Bernier and Dr. Tadlock and a lot of those professors throughout my time here at OU. It's good to be back in Bentley Hall, where I spent most of my career here. So just thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be here. So similar to what some folks have already said, I came here to the university and wanted to do political science, thinking of law school and eventually running for office. And really enjoyed all of my political science coursework all the way through, and went clear through my senior year. Took the LSATs. I actually got into Akron to go to law school, and I kind of had one of those moments and sat back and said, do I really want to do this? And the answer was no. I didn't want to go to law school. I didn't really want to practice law. Didn't want to be a lawyer. So I was kind of thinking to myself, well, what did I just do for 4 years? What was I just doing for 4 years? But one thing I guess I'd say about the political science degree is it's really pretty multidisciplinary. A lot of times you tell somebody, oh, I'm a political science major, and they kind of say, oh, what are you going to do with that? Or what does that mean? And don't let anybody pigeonhole you through your degree. You can really do a lot with your degree. And that really kind of became really relevant to me probably these past few years when I was working on my MBA coursework. So I just finished my Master's in Business in August, and I did it here at Ohio University through the online program. So I did that, and I actually felt very well prepared for the MBA, oddly enough, from my coursework as a political science major. And one of the main reasons for that is I felt that I had very strong writing and communication skills. In political science, we're no stranger to writing papers and things of that nature. A lot of group work is in the master's program, so even virtually you're in groups and you do these group projects, and either I was a sucker or I was really good at writing. And I like to think that I was really good at writing because a lot of times I was asked to consolidate and edit and make sure citations were correct. And I do believe that I have strong writing and speaking skills from my political science degree, which helped with the MBA. But let me back up a little bit and why am I in business and how did I get there? When I was a junior here at Ohio University, heading into my senior year, that summer I actually had a business internship. And I would highly recommend that for everybody in this room, seeking an internship while you're here, because as you go out into the professional working career world, a lot of people look for relevant work experience, and it's hard to do that when you graduate and say, well, I've been in school for the past 4 years, what do you expect of me? Well, you can put those internships on your resume as relevant experience to work towards a career. And don't necessarily pigeonhole yourself into an internship that matches identically with what you want to do in the future. Take that time now to kind of experience and try some things that maybe you wouldn't have thought you've done otherwise. For me, that was a business internship with Olympic Steel. They're headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio. About 14 locations all over the nation, 2,000 plus employees. And so I was in Cleveland doing a business internship, and I kind of got to see a little bit of what business means. I spent time in the sales department, purchasing, quality, procurement, basically all the departments kind of get a taste for it. And it was good for me in the sense that, hey, I kind of like this business thing, I can see myself doing this, and then within the business environment, I could say, I really don't want to be a quality engineer, I really don't want to do this or that, but I do like sales, I do like purchasing. So you really kind of learn a lot about yourself and your likes and dislikes through an internship. I really encourage you to try and do as many as you can while you're here at the university, simply for that, to A, get experience and build a network and find what you like. Once you are in an internship, I encourage you not to go through the motions. So I will tell you, sometimes, a lot of times, internships are kind of what you would expect. Kind of grunt work, filing papers, doing whatever you have to do. But don't let that discourage you. Take take it as a learning experience, and if it's something that you're interested in, speak up and get to meet those people who are kind of the movers and shakers within that organization. You know, who are some peers who are closer to your age, who are some fellow Bobcats, who are some of the higher ups within the company. Talk to them, get to know them, and if you're really interested in the company, let them know that. And that's what I did. When I was finishing up my internship, I was talking to some of those folks, and I said, hey, I would be interested in coming back and working after graduation. And I kind of put that bug in their ear, so to speak, to kind of put it out there. And you know, I was very fortunate, and I came back for my last year, senior year, and we were on quarters then, so it was fall quarter. I lived in Bromley Hall. I had a letter in my mail, and it was an offer for a full-time job after I graduated my senior year. So that's an awesome, awesome feeling if you can be a senior and know that you have a job in the bag. But you know, take advantage of those internship opportunities, network, and take it as an opportunity to kind of learn more about yourself and what you do and don't like.
Thank you so much. Rob, would you like to continue and talk about someone who did do the path of law school?
If we want to call it a path. So I took a little bit of a non-traditional route to law school. I took some time off between graduating at OU and actually enrolling at University of Toledo's College of Law. And I think that was actually a great thing for me to do, to echo some things that Kyle said and echo some things that Ryan has said, is how I ended up in the place I am now is basically based upon the connections that I made before I got to law school. You know, when I was at OU, I was very involved politically, locally, got to work on some campaigns, again, some paid, some not paid, and that really sort of set myself up for the opportunity to work at the Ohio General Assembly before I went to law school, which was a great place to learn about public policy, both from a actual policy perspective and from a political perspective. And then when I did go to law school, I carried those connections with me. So when I went to law school, things are a little bit better now than they were then, but this was sort of the height of the recession, definitely the height of the legal recession, in which you had, you know, more people than ever in law schools all around the country and fewer jobs for folks who were graduating. So my graduating class at the University of Toledo was about 120 folks or so. I was one of 2 people in that entire class that had a full-time job when I graduated. So you're talking about 100 plus people who have taken out tens of thousands, if not $100,000 to go to law school, and I was one of 2. It was me and a good friend of mine who had secured a clerkship with a judge. And again, a lot of the other folks have went on to do wonderful things from there. But the reason that I ended up in that spot was when I was at OU, you know, I wasn't just going to class. I wasn't just doing the bare minimum. It was, in fact, I was probably doing a little less in class because I was taking the public affairs internship with Dr. Burton, I think every single time I possibly could. I probably got tired of me coming into his office to say, hey, sign this paper again. But because of those connections, I had the ability to work on a successful State House campaign, which then led to a role in the Ohio General Assembly, which then led, when I was actually in law school, for someone who I worked for, the Speaker Pro Tem, to say, hey, we need someone to go help out with this campaign. You know, isn't Dorns in Toledo now at law school? Well, let's go get him. Well, you know, 2 years later, his law firm is looking for someone to staff a clerkship position at the State Building Trades, and he's like, hey, well, let's just go get that guy. We know him. We know him from both a political perspective. We know him from a legal perspective. You know, hey, let's go ahead and give him that job. And you know, my career sort of followed that path ever since. So one of the big advices I would give for folks is when you're here, you know, don't just think like your education ends at the classroom door. Athens and OU is a wonderful place, not only to have an education, but also have, you know, life education. And then 2, if you are serious about graduate school, but you don't quite know what it's going to look like afterwards, you know, do a year or 2 in the workforce to figure out, or maybe make additional connections out there, so that when you are done with that, you're not just someone who jumps from undergrad to graduate school, whether it's law school or any other program, and you think, you know, you get out and you don't really have any other connections to folks who can help you either network-wise or into that first role in your career. So taking that time off for me to go out and do sort of campaign work and work in the legislature was a huge benefit for me sort of moving forward in my career.
Thank you. Marc, would you like to continue on the legal path here?
Sure. I'm very envious of how highly motivated everybody up here is. And if you're equally highly motivated, you'll be very successful like the panelists up here are. Now, I was a child of the 60s. I went to OU. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I loved going to school, I loved taking classes. I loved my professors. I loved having a good time. The drinking age was 18 back then. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I got out. I had to go into the Army. We had something called the draft back then. I got out of the Army. Still no idea what I wanted to do. I said, I loved OU. I'll go back to OU. I got a degree in government, a master's in government, because it was called government, not political science back then. I did that. I still had no idea what I wanted to do. So I took a year off. I taught junior high school. I learned what I did not want to do. And then I said, you know, I'll put off life for another 3 years and I'll get my parents off my back. I'll go to law school. So I went to law school. Now, the advantage I had that you don't have is that after 9 years of higher education, my total student loans was $2,500, which is truly amazing. So I get out of law school. I went to Toledo Law School. I liked Ohio. I was from New York originally. And I get out, and highly motivated Marc, talking to my brother, who's a successful doctor in Boston, says, you know, Marc, I have some patients of mine who are lawyers. So if you come up to Boston, I could probably get you a job. So I came up to Boston, right? And I came up to Boston, and then I was a DA for 6 years. I was a private attorney for 10 years. I tried a whole bunch of murder cases and major felonies. I was a juvenile court judge, then you're named by the governor. And then I was named to the appeals court. And I was in the appeals court for 14 years. I got out of the appeals court on a Wednesday in August. 5 days later, I'm living in Bromley Hall as a visiting professor here, teaching in this classroom. Okay, you know, talk about coming full circle. The advice I can give you is the following. Be pleasantly assertive. See what you want to do. See who the person is who could help you accomplish that, and pleasantly insert yourself into their lives. Everybody up here is very friendly, and they're willing to help fellow Bobcats. Come up to them. And that's precisely what happened 6 years ago when I was at a similar seminar like this, and a student came up to me and said, Marc, I'd love to come up to Boston. I'm thinking of law school. So I said, you know, send me your resume. That summer, he was doing an internship with me in Boston, having an absolutely wonderful time. He worked on law cases with me. He helped research my book that Sarah, it's called Old Whiskey and Young Women. It's about one's famous case. That was a history course I taught here. And he's now graduating Georgetown, and he'll be a very, you should tap into him. That guy is a real go-getter. He's a very charismatic person, like everybody up on this panel. So if you don't know what you want to do, think of me, okay? Because it will come into place. Do a bunch of different things. Doing internships, unfortunately, they're unpaid, which is enormously unfair, frankly, but, you know, such is life. And discover what you like doing, and try to contact people and overcome your shyness and reticence about doing it, and contact people, contact fellow Bobcats who are doing that which you would like to do, and reach out to them. The worst they're going to do is say, I can't help you. More than likely, being a Bobcat, they will try to help you.
Thank you so much. And Steve, we're waiting to hear from you as well.
Okay, well, Steve Ellison, I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and my advice to you would be get involved. You probably already are involved, but get involved with things here on campus, with other student groups, and also, like many of the other folks up here, I was on Student Senate, and that was a very interesting thing. I was involved with my fraternity as well, and lots of other extracurricular activities, but a lot of fun. But internships are so important. I had the great fortune of having Marc Weinberg as one of my professors, and he heads up the Voinovich School now, and he got me involved with several internships. I had an internship for the mayor of City of Athens with a common pleas judge here in Athens, and then at the state senate in Columbus, and it was just a great opportunity. And then also in Washington, D.C. For a congressman. And those were great internships and gave me the ability to know what it's like going to work, like with real adults. It's a little different than college. And being able to have conversations with people is so important. And I'll illustrate that with how I ended up working in corporate America for the past 3 decades. I actually went to the wrong interview. So it's an interesting story. Back in the days before we signed up for everything online, because Al Gore hadn't invented the internet yet, apparently, we actually had to register with companies at Lindley Hall, right next door, and you would sign up, and they would have it would be like a big paper little sign-up sheet. And in the first column, it had the names of the companies, and then the subsequent columns were interview slots. And so I put my name on an open slot that, I didn't have classes during that time, and the company I thought I was interviewing with was not the company that I ended up interviewing with. So I go to the interview the next day, and again, we didn't have the internet back then, so I was interviewing with a company called United Telecommunications, Inc. That was problem one. I didn't know who that was, so little bit of a problem. The second problem is they were interviewing for computer scientists and accountants. That's what they're looking for. So I went to I debated about should I even go to the interview or not, and I said, well, I'll go ahead and go. I go to the interview. I sit across the table from a guy. His name is Dale Kuzer. I remember to this day. And I said, Dale, I think there's been a problem. I think I must have signed up for the wrong interview. First problem is I don't have any idea who United Telecommunications Inc. is. And the second problem is I hope to never be confused with a computer scientist or an accountant. And I said, so if you want to go ahead with the interview, Dale, I'd be glad to do that. And if not, I'd certainly understand. So and I just smiled at him, and he smiled at me, and he looked at his watch, and he says, I'm not doing anything for the next 45 minutes. Let's just have a conversation. So as it turns out, they have a management development program that he also interviews for, but he wasn't on campus for that purpose. And I ended up being hired by that company. That company was Sprint. It became Sprint, and their management development program, and I worked for them for 22 years. And it all started with just having a good conversation. So I would say, being in the political science department, you should be really good at having conversations with people. And I like, Marc, how you described that, being a little bit persistent in a way that doesn't have to be pushy is a really important skill set. So, and you can develop that in your interactions in the classroom and outside of the classroom here at Ohio University.
Great. Oh, thank you so much, everyone. Now, we really like to open it up to questions from our audience and see if you have any questions for any or for multiple of our esteemed panelists.
Not all at once. Slow down. One thing I want to add to Steve's story is that had that scenario been reversed and they were trying to interview for management candidates and a computer scientist had shown up, that computer science student would not have gotten that job. So, just to emphasize, to underline the value of your degree, when I graduated, I really did not appreciate how well prepared I was for the world and for the job market. I thought, I didn't get an engineering degree. I didn't get a teaching degree. I wasn't trained for a specific job, and so now I was going to struggle. The truth was that I've always been sort of cutting my own path, and now I was ready to do that. So it worked out for me, and I'm sure many of you are the same way. I think Steve's story I have never heard that. I'm surprised, but Steve's story is a great illustration of the kind of preparation you get in this line of education.
All right, what's on your mind? Come on.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
Okay, I'll start.
Thank you.
Okay, well, you guys your careers have worked around fostering relationships. I'm kind of similar in the sense of I am a global studies major, which is super interdisciplinary, so a little bit of history, a little bit of political science, but I've had a business data internship the last 2 summers, but it's sales-based on that side. I'm no computer scientist either. So it looks like I can likely take my route into that field, but there's so much jargon and technical terms that come with that I'm not aware of. But you kind of have that bug in your ear all the time. That's a lot about who you know over what you know, or like it's your personality and characteristics you bring to the table, like skills can be taught. I guess it's open for all of you. Would you confirm, I don't want to neglect education for that matter, but do you believe like it's a lot of networking is stronger, who you know versus what you know, and skills can be taught versus personalities kind of can't change?
I'll get started on this. I'm happy to be contradicted by my fellow panelists here, but I think in an educational discipline like political science, where you aren't learning a particular vocation, network is paramount. It's really important how much energy and focus you put into developing a network. I wouldn't be able to nutshell it and say it's all who you know and not what you know. It's important to know things, but when I'm talking to my team members at Mccauley and Company, I oftentimes refer to being cocktail conversant. You want to be able to have a conversation at a cocktail party about anything that comes up. And a liberal arts education like we have lends itself to that. So when you are in those situations and you carry yourself properly and you represent yourself well, you can have the expectation that you're going to have a follow-up conversation if you initiate it. So like Marc was saying, it really boils down to your network and your ability to follow up. Another watchword or phrase at Mccauley and Company is polite persistence. You have to be willing to put the work in. You have to be willing to go to somebody and introduce yourself and explain to them if they have a job that you want, or they are in a decision-making capacity for some. I do a lot of grant writing, so if I want to introduce myself to somebody that's giving away a grant, I have to be able to explain to them why my client can serve the interests of their organization and why they should give that money. So if you hope to leave here and find quick traction in your career, networking and persistence really are the essential ingredients to success.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. For me, it's three. It's talent, luck, and perseverance. That's it. And luck, you make your own luck. If you persevere, you need the talent, though. So I fully agree with you.
I actually don't have any talent. Okay. I've been very successful. So that's the only way I would disagree with you. Sorry.
The thing that I would add, so the friends that I have from OU that have went on to do interesting and good things, we've always referred to as bobcatting. So everything that my fellow panelists have just said, we just always refer to as, they're bobcatting. It's, hey, you're willing to outwork folks, you're willing to figure out things you may not already know, and because it's Athens and not Miami, you generally, the folks who come through here, especially through the political science department, are totally fine having an open, easy conversation with folks, and the very fact you've been able to, get through OU for 4 or 5 years without, getting kicked out, it means you've got probably a good personality, a good sense of the world, and you're probably an easygoing person, and that we just always refer to that as sort of bobcatting hey, putting together the talent, the drive, inserting yourself in there. That's sort of who we are as Bobcats. This isn't Harvard, but I know a lot of people, or I know a couple folks who graduated from Harvard. These folks are sticks in the mud. They're not folks that you want to be around. Where I think probably most folks in this room, you want to hang out with them, you want to be around them, and that really matters when you get in your career. Once you're around someone who you like, who has talent, who works hard, you're like, if I got the opportunity, I'm going to help them out. Same thing backwards. If you have those qualities yourself, someone's probably going to be wanting to help you out, and that's my friends always joke about just calling it bobcatting.
Tracy, I think you had a.
So there's a piece of what you said that I want to touch on that might be a little bit different than what the other panelists would say. But when you started to talk about that technical language, I picked up on this reticence from you, like your shoulders kind of dropped, you seemed a little uncomfortable. And I would encourage you to push yourself. Like, don't ever be afraid to learn a new skill, even if it frightens you. Being scared is natural. Don't be afraid to fail. And to prove I'm no hypocrite, I'm taking 6 Sigma right now. That's heavily statistical, and there may be a professor in this room named Dr. Burton who referred to me once as not very mathy. And I do not say that to say that he's wrong, because he's not. I'm really not. But it's something that I wanted to learn that I thought would bring value to my career. And I thought, well, you know, if it doesn't kill me, it'll make me stronger. So don't be afraid to push yourself into those new waters. You know, you'll come through the other side stronger, and it'll help your career. I think sometimes as women, we feel like the margin of error is so small. You know, if we make a mistake, people will call us dumb. But don't be afraid.
Yeah, I would just offer maybe a slightly alternative view, and that is network, in my opinion, will help get you into the job. Might help open opportunities for you, but it's your competence, what you actually deliver. So it is part of talent and making your own luck by working really hard that matters. So companies hire people to get jobs done, and it's up to us to demonstrate that competency. So that's my counsel, and I agree. Don't be afraid to learn new things. There's probably somewhere a little Wikipedia within the company about all these terms and jargon. Many companies actually set those things up so you can learn the language.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alex. Thank you all for being here today. My major is journalism and strategic communications. And that's mainly because in high school I was on the newspaper, and it kind of seemed like a natural fit when I got here for that to be my major. However, poli-sci is definitely like my passion. I've interned and volunteered on multiple campaigns, doing all the grunt work among students in it. So with a non-political science degree, what are some pros and cons of that, and how can I use that to my advantage going forward as I pursue a career in hopefully politics?
Okay, I'll go first again. I'm never short on things to say. I think that a journalism degree probably sets you up equally well, just in a different way than a poli-sci degree. One of the lessons that I have learned, especially in the capacity of a grant writer for so many of my clients, is the ability to communicate effectively, efficiently, succinctly is paramount. It's really important. When Steve talks about skills and capabilities, that's the one that you really need. And it's not just communication on paper. Again, you have to represent yourself well, or you'll never get that job to start writing. I've looked at a lot of writing samples that I was impressed with and did the interview and was not so impressed, and vice versa. I've done interviews where I thought, wow, that person actually has something, and then read their writing samples and found, you know, I just don't have room for that. I really emphasize the necessity of effective communication. So whatever you're learning over in Scripps, you'll be able to apply that either in political communication, or if you get into, you know, some corporation's communications department and work your way over into their government relations department. There are many different tracks and paths. I've been working with the poli-sci department and the last few chairs to take my contributions to Ohio University and earmark them specifically for career advising, so that poli-sci students know, if you have a poli-sci major, what is the track that you can actually be on? How do you go from graduating or being a student to getting an internship to leveraging that into a career? And I think one of the key components of that is being able to write and speak, and even the nonverbal stuff, you know, just carrying yourself well.
I would agree. I mean, I don't think it so much matters what your degree is in. I think it's being able to communicate the relevant skill set and being able to demonstrate that. I have an English major as an undergrad, and I run a charitable foundation. But I write grants. You know, I explain to people that the writing is integral to everything I do every day, and I haven't really been challenged on that. So I think it's just being able to explain to people why it's relevant.
I mean, I'm obviously a professor and a chair in political science, so I'm not going to say majors don't matter, but but to some extent, it's the information, it's the skills that you are learning and practicing. So your major, that's a piece of it, but so are the electives that you're taking, the way that you're organizing the rest of your coursework to give you the skills and the experiences you want to get you the kind of experiences, the kind of connections, being able to network, being able to practice your writing, your communication skills. To get the kind of career path that you're interested in.
It sounds like you're very focused and you're doing all the right things. So you're right on this, keep going down that road.
Well, again, the fields we're talking about here as far as public affairs or things that are related to that, again, getting back to the things some one of the other panelists said, there's not like a credential for that. There's not, well, you don't have a, it's very clear for computer scientists, you need to have that credential. It's very clear for teachers, you need to have that credential. For what we're talking about here today, there's not a perfect path for you to take and move forward. So again, it's more about developing the skills that I think everyone's mentioning here today. And one of them very clearly is sort of the ability to communicate, whether that's interpersonally or the written word. And scripts will certainly be a benefit in doing that. But again, we're not necessarily talking about public affairs or anything related to government or the corporate world. You need to have this. It's much more nebulous than that.
Yes, yeah, Dr. Bernier.
So a lot of my students know I'm always really interested in books, and that's why I made sure everyone got a book as a present for coming today. But I was wondering if we could go around, or if anyone wants to volunteer, the books that you think have mattered to you, either recently or over time, or if not a book, an idea that you thought really stands out that would be good for people here to follow up on in terms of their own, what I call night table reading or summer reading or things like that that kind of take you beyond just the books assigned in the
Great
classroom.
question. I'm going to look up the author so I don't.
So I would say Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Okay.
It's been out there for a while, but I would really recommend that. It focuses you on things that you can control that make you more effective, and very practical. I thought it's very well done. I think it's been updated too a few times now, but it's a good read.
So I'm a huge history nerd, and history and political nerd. So I would say I traded to his class, which I actually don't remember the author, but Dr. Bernier probably knows the author offhand because she's the huge FDR nerd as well. This is a biography of FDR, and one of the things that, whether it's FDR, Abraham Lincoln, or whatever American leader that you want to sort of take some lessons from, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned of great leaders and how they dealt with issues of the day or controversies, or how they built their teams and how they led folks. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and certainly in that time period there was a lot that this country was dealing with, and certainly a leader that if you can emulate some of the things that he did at that time, I think you're in good company.
One of my favorite books, when I was here other than political science, I actually minored in economics. One of my favorite books is Freakonomics. It's a really easy read. It's Levitt and Dubner are the authors of that. One's a journalist and one's an economist. But it's very interesting reading, and really kind of the message of the book is nothing is one-dimensional. Nothing is one-dimensional. Nothing is really the way that it appears necessarily. It encourages you to kind of delve into difficult topics, do research, present data, and kind of explain different angles of different issues.
The 2 books I'm reading right now, one is a project management certification guide, and the other is about capital campaigns. So neither one probably seems that compelling, but the advice I would give is maybe just carve out some time every day, or every other day, and just read for fun, read for professional development, even if it's just 20 minutes in the morning before you go to work. It's a good investment in yourself. It'll help you learn new skills, and so I really highly encourage you to always be reading something.
So I read to write. I write a column, Law and History, that led to my book. I'm starting a new column. It's called Unsolved, about unsolved murders. So everything I'm reading is to further that new career, if you will. So I'm reading books about unsolved murders and then, taking the next step on that. It's fun stuff. I'm reading a lot of fun stuff. My latest article is about Crazy Joey Gallo, who was a New York mobster who got whacked at Umberto's Clam House. So that's my latest column, and I had to do a lot of reading on that. And let me tell you, I love that reading. So.
My book is called The Firm, and it's by a guy named Duff McDonald, and it kept sticking out as Donald Duck, but I knew that wasn't right. So I had to look it up. So The Firm is about the origins of McKinsey & Company, and if you look at my website and my description of my company, someday I would love to grow up to be like McKinsey and Company, you know, this global monolithic consulting firm that has experts in a variety of different fields, but you have to start somewhere, and that's really kind of the inspiration for this stage of my career was when I was reading this book several years ago as a traveling, commuting lobbyist back and forth between Cleveland and Washington, D.C. I was reading this book on the plane, you know, a couple of times a week, and I thought, you know, we really ought to shift gears and not just focus on one particular industry, but move into different things. And so that's where I am today.
Right. I think we have time for another question, so I see one right here.
Hi, my name's Rachel, and I'm an environmental studies major with political science minor. So one thing I've definitely noticed in my environmental studies classes and political science courses are this division between maybe activism and professionalism. So I was wondering if any of you had an opinion on being an activist and being passionate about things, but also doing that in a way as to not alienate potential employers.
That's a great question.
That's a great question, and I would say you can definitely do both. You can definitely do both, and you know, to put it as simply as I can, do what you know is right. Right? It's common sense stuff. You can be an activist and you can be involved in your community, and you can, you know, do all those things that you feel passionate for without necessarily having to be arrested or something along those lines. And I'm not saying, you know, and certainly, you know, people feel passionate about those issues and they're welcome to do what they feel is right, but you know, the point that you're driving home is how do you do it and still be professional? You can certainly do both. One thing that I always appreciated being a political science major was, you know, sitting in classes and politics comes up and you talk about it, and I always felt that in a lot of I guess environments, politics can be a divisive issue. But I always enjoyed being a political science major because folks of different dispositions and beliefs could sit in a room and have, you know, pretty lively conversations, but at the end of the day, you left class and you were more educated for it. So you can certainly do that, and you should do that. You should stand up for the things that you believe in and things that are important to you, and also there are ways to take that and into your professional career.
So I think that I don't think they're necessarily one or the other. I mean, I think you can be an activist in a professional kind of way. So for instance, like the union that I work for, we work with folks on both sides of the aisle, both Republicans and Democrats, because we have to. You know, Ohio has supermajorities in both the Ohio House and the House Senate. So if we don't work with both Democrats and Republicans, you know, we're going to have our issues come to the forefront in not a way that we want. That said, you know, not to get too political, but you know, I'm very active in the local Democratic Party in Franklin County in the city of Columbus. But you know, I'm not somebody who is, you know, necessarily pushing things to the extreme as far as being out in front and really, you know, aggressively going after folks that I think are wrong. So again, I get to do that personal activism myself, and sometimes, you know, who I support or who I want to see move forward differs with who my organization, you know, wants to see move on politically. But the issue is that I'm not necessarily doing that in a way in which my workplace is saying, well, hey, what are you doing there, Rob? But because I've done it in a professional kind of way, you know, there's no repercussions or anything along those lines. In fact, my work looks at sort of my individual sort of activism on a local level as a benefit, because when they say, hey, we need to know what's going on locally politically here in central Ohio, they say, hey, Rob, you know, what's going on here? What can you tell us about this? Even though you know, we may disagree about the outcome of what we want on that issue. So again, I don't think it needs to be one or the other. I just think when you're thinking about activism, especially when you're getting out of sort of the college atmosphere, you need to think about, you know, hold those beliefs that Kyle said, do what you think is right, but also think about it in a professional sense of how do I move the ball forward for these issues that I care about. And more often than not, you move that ball forward by being more professional than necessarily just causing a big scene.
You want to be an activist, become a lawyer. You have to sue everybody, right? So,
One other comment there. If we're thinking generationally, I'm a Gen Xer, and what that means for me is that I'm comfortable with social media, but I don't feel comfortable putting everything on social media. I think the millennials and the Gen Z folks that are coming up now it's always been there. And you're very comfortable with having your lives on social media. The generations that came before me are not comfortable with it almost at all. So when you're out being active, when you're protesting, or you're tweeting things or posting things or Instagramming pics of whatever, that stuff is out there and it can be out there forever. So I'm going to give you a little bit different message. I don't want to tell you to squelch your voice. I want you to be thoughtful about how you project that voice, because if I am going to hire somebody, I'm going to look for you. I'm going to Google your name. I'm going to dig. And when I do that, and I find, whether I agree with you personally or not, I find that you have been doing loud, silly things, that's a risk for me. I have clients that pay me thousands of dollars a month to represent them, and I need to have confidence in the people that I hire that they will represent me and my clients well. So I caution you to be very thoughtful about the way you represent yourself on social media, in public. Think about those knuckleheads in Charlottesville that were the subject of a social media crusade. People took pictures of those white supremacist protesters and they put them on blast and said, identify these people. We're going to get them fired from their jobs. That happens. So be thoughtful about what you're doing.
I would agree with that, ultimately. I mean, I think, you should never be afraid to form an educated opinion and stand by it. And in fact, I think you're kind of required to do so, because that's what leadership is. But do conduct yourself in a dignified manner, because what you put on social media will last with you forever now at this point. So make sure that you're being mature and dignified, but do stand up for yourself.
Great. Well, I think we are out of time for today, so I just want to thank our panelists so much for coming and talking with us today, and thank you all as well for joining us. And for those of you who are interested, keep in mind you should follow the Political Science Department Facebook page to learn more about our great events and other opportunities to interact with alumni and focus on your careers as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.